Hi, I'm Brandon Dawson, and this is The Distiller, a podcast about how we find meaningful work and how we find meaning in the work we do. My guest for this episode is literacy advocate Libby Hunter. Libby is the co-founder and executive director of WordPlay Cincinnati, a nonprofit community literacy center committed to helping young people in Cincinnati fulfill their potential through reading, writing, and storytelling. Libby started WordPlay in 2012 in response to an incident that happened in her neighborhood, an incident she talks about in our interview. She started her career in nonprofit work before moving into the for-profit sector out of necessity, but eventually moved back into nonprofit work, starting WordPlay. And starting WordPlay was more than just working in the nonprofit world. It was the challenge of starting and running a nonprofit from the ground up. A task and a journey filled with challenges and learning opportunities that you'll hear Libby talk about at length in our conversation. I think my favorite thing about this interview is the insight that it gives into what meaningful work really means for people who have truly oriented their lives around working in the service of others. Sure, there are degrees of meaning, and not everybody can be working in the nonprofit sector. If we were, society wouldn't function. But for all the conversation about meaningful work, it's surprising to me to hear how little that comes up in the discussion with someone like Libby. And it's not because it's not a consideration, it's because the entire context in which her work takes place is that meaning. Her work is so pervaded by meaning that it can be difficult to parse out exactly what that means to her and where in that work her opportunities come for rest and personal reflection on what she does. We met with Libby at a fairly new spot in Cincinnati. 3 Points Urban Brewery is a brand new, and by brand new, I mean only a month old as of our recording. It's a brewery and tap room in Cincinnati's Pendleton Arts District. You may recall, we were in the Pendleton for episode 11 when we met with Dr. Meredith Shockley-Smith at Urbana Cafe. Urbana is just across the street from 3 Points Brewery. Well, even in the 2.5 months since that episode, the neighborhood has continued to change with new businesses opening, it seems, every week. Aaron and the staff of 3 Points let us in just before they opened up on a steamy July afternoon, and we sampled some of their delicious beers while we talked with Libby. Libby is an inspiration. She's a down-to-earth hero who's doing great work in the city day after day. She doesn't talk about herself much. She's used to talking about wordplay and the mission. So the insights we got into her process, her journey, and her struggles was a privilege. And as you'll hear, there were some moments where the struggle and the losses of a life lived in service to the community really comes through. I am deeply appreciative of the time Libby spent with us. I really enjoyed our time together. I hope you'll enjoy our discussion as much as I did. Here it is, my conversation with Libby Hunter of WordPlay Cincinnati on The Distiller. So you are the executive director and co-founder of WordPlay. Mm-hmm. Before we get into the story of how you got there, tell us a little bit about, I know that WordPlay was started in 2012 with a mission to help young people in Cincinnati fulfill their potential through reading, writing, and storytelling. Tell us what that means and what WordPlay does on a daily basis.
So what it means is we are really working hard to help give kids a positive relationship with reading and writing, and storytelling can encompass so much, right? But understanding your own personal narrative, how it relates to the world around you, how it impacts sense of identity, all of that. So giving kids a positive, safe space to explore and to also gain those vital literacy skills in stealthy ways so that they can gain confidence and self-efficacy and become lifelong learners. Okay, and that comes about in tutoring, in literacy classes? Yeah, not even tutoring so much. When we started, we kind of identified tutoring as one of the things we offer, but we first talk about the space before learning can even happen, building relationships. So first and foremost, we're all about community building, bringing people together, often from very different backgrounds for a mutual exchange. You know, it's not just that the kids have a need and we fulfill it. We all have a need and we can all help each other learn and grow. So after school programs, we're now in schools. We have 2 locations. One is inside Aiken High School, so we're there to work with teachers in their classrooms as well as after school. Then we have weekends and we do special offsite events as well. Cool. And the majority of it happens at the WordPlay Center, which is in Northside in Cincinnati. Yeah, actually about half and half at our main writing center in Northside, but then also Aiken High School. We see as many as 200 kids a week there. Oh, wow. So, yeah. Wow, great. And then the WordPlay Center in Northside is a companion to the Urban Legend Institute. Yeah, now Urban Legend typewriters. Give it a new
Oh, okay,
name.
Urban Legend
Yeah,
typewriters.
we scaled it down to just typewriters. That was our biggest seller.
Okay.
I have a wonderful guy, Dr. Richard Polt from Xavier University, who is our typewriter guy. It was just too much to keep a whole store stocked with cool things and to find volunteer clerks.
Gotcha.
And we needed the program space, so typewriters are it.
Awesome. Awesome. So if you're in Cincinnati and you need a used typewriter, or you need your typewriter repaired, or you're looking to sell an old typewriter or donate, better
That's
yet,
right.
an
That's
old
right.
typewriter.
Absolutely.
Check out
Yeah, that's
WordPlay.
our social enterprise. And really, it does bring in enough revenue to truly help keep some of our programs free each year. So,
Right on.
yeah, it's fantastic.
So that gives us context to talk a little bit about why you are doing this and why you started this. And I know that you've been interviewed before and have given a bit of the story, but give us the gist of it, because what I really want to focus on, what the focus of the podcast is sort of what that means to you about your work. So what have you done in your past professionally that led to this point?
Boy, I've had a real, very meandering career path. And I have to say, I've always had a real drive to do good and to do good work in a way that was meaningful socially and on a larger level. It's not always been the case. Sometimes in hardship, right? We just have to take a job that pays something. So started off thinking I was going to be in academia. I was just aimed at becoming a professor, studying East European studies, went overseas, did research after my graduate work, and got there just through sheer academic burnout, got involved with the Red Cross. I was living in Hungary at the time, the International Red Cross. So their headquarters in Budapest. I was able to work as assistant to the head of the international department and get involved with all kinds of fantastic things, refugee resettlement being the main one. And so that really inspired me to kind of take a 90-degree turn from academia into the nonprofit world, and came back here to Cincinnati and got involved with Catholic Charities, first as a volunteer and then as their first refugee resettlement coordinator. So that definitely was I can't even say that was my entree to the nonprofit world. Back in grad school, a friend of mine had founded a nonprofit called the East European Village Project, and I was one of his first people to go into villages. My territory was Romania, and establish sites for volunteer teachers to come from the U.S. and spend their summers in Romania. So I got my first nonprofit bug back then in grad school. And it was actually a fantastic learning experience. I stayed involved with them for 2 years. And then, after I resettled back in the States in the mid-'90s, Catholic Charities had to make a detour into other things that would sustain me once I became a single mom.
Got to pay the bills.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And real estate happened to be it. I was renovating houses on the side. I love working with my hands to bring in a little bit of extra cash. And then rather suddenly, single mom with 3 kids, no child support, no safety net. And I said, wow, I've got this real estate license. Maybe I should go ahead and become a salesperson, which to me was like a big, awful word. Yeah. I'm not a salesperson. It was completely counter to what I thought my identity was as helping people. But I just tried to reframe my work in real estate as helping people. It really is that. And I got very involved in a personal kind of commitment of mine to the environment. So I got very involved with the U.S. Green Building Council and sustainable building, and also affordable housing for lower and low moderate income families. So that's also another big issue right here in Cincinnati.
Yep.
So it's very gratifying toward the end of my 6.5-year career in real estate. I was working almost exclusively with nonprofit community development corporations.
Cool.
On trying to stabilize neighborhoods through low and moderate income housing.
So WordPlay is not a new thing for you in terms of both the nonprofit sector, in terms of attacking social issues. You said that you have a drive to do good or to find meaning. One of the things that I'm finding is, we started the podcast and we started talking about meaningful work. And number one, that doesn't mean the same thing to every person that you talk to. And number two, a lot of people don't actually think that way. They may be doing meaningful work, but they're not thinking of it in terms of a drive to do good in the world. Where does that impulse for you come? Before WordPlay, when you're in college, when you're in grad school, where did that start? Is that parents, or is it?
Actually, I could possibly credit it back to my parents. They're definitely part of it. My dad was an educator his whole professional life and a farmer at the same time. So the overwork comes from my dad's side as well. My mom is she was an educator as well initially, and then a psychologist, and just always volunteered, took me along with her. She remembers back to the time when I was a toddler. She remembers me wondering why there were homeless people in the world. When we have all these trees, my goal was to take everybody out into the forest and teach them how to build their own houses. So it's this kind of hardwired thing in me that no one, if it's in our power to help, then why are people suffering? You know, why isn't there enough to go around? And also that, to whom much is given, much is expected, right? So I feel like it is our obligation, those of us who can, to do. And so that's always been what's driven me. And much to my dad's concern, it's never been a paycheck that's driven me. But, what I found is to make that commitment to doing good, where there is absolutely no paycheck attached to it, to then live a simple life, to scale down the lifestyle, to make our lives as kind of austere as possible and rewarding. Right. And it's not about the material things at all for me. So although I need to drive a car,
yeah, there's
I like
certain
to have a
things
nice
you have
bike.
to have. Yeah,
that's right. I want to live in a house. So of course, those things are the realities of today's world. But I've found it to be very freeing to just be able to pare down my life, as much as I possibly can, so that this work, which sustains me in so many ways, and now finally I get paid to do it as well. So.
Right. Is that something, do you have the dark nights of the soul in terms of saying, maybe I should just give all this up and go back to the commercial world, or is it embedded enough in you? And is maybe austerity is the wrong word, but does the frugality necessary to work in the nonprofit world come naturally enough to you that there's not a conflict around it?
Oh, no, there's conflict. Absolutely. My dog just had cancer and I'm $3,000 in the hole, so things like that happen. And I have no way to pay it off. I until last year, to be perfectly honest, I cleaned houses on the weekends to get by, so it is perpetually a conflict. It's always been very worth it to stick through, with this. And again, now WordPlay's at a place where we're really healthy and we're trying to catch up all our staff to what are, competitive salaries for this kind of work. But no, I have to say the year I left real estate, it rebounded. And my former real estate partner, who's an amazingly talented person, I mean, this was all to her credit, but just did outstandingly well. Many,
right as you
nice
left.
dollar signs there, nice zeros behind it. And I thought, did I pick the wrong time? But the time kind of picked me, I think. And I made a commitment to it. And I really feel the need to honor that commitment.
Yeah. Do you find, because in Cincinnati, you're a person that's out there in the public, the work that you're doing is fairly public work, the work of nonprofit. I was thinking about this today and actually wrote down that one of the things I didn't know about the work of nonprofits was the degree of collaboration necessary. You can't do nonprofit work by yourself and be a solo entrepreneur, because you got to have boards and you got to have the city on your side and you got to cultivate donors and volunteers. And if you are an introvert who doesn't know how to work with people, the nonprofit world is going to be really difficult for you. So I guess that's maybe a statement. I'm wondering, because you seem like a really visible person to me, if you have to combat the perception that visibility automatically equals, she must be doing really well. She must not need anything. Libby's out there. I see her everywhere. She's on TV and she's being interviewed. So she's doing fine. Whereas in the back room, you're counting the numbers and you're scraping to make things work.
Yeah.
Does that resonate?
Yeah. So there's a lot in there that is very true. First, the collaboration. It's essential that nonprofits collaborate. Nobody can exist as an island anymore. It used to kind of be the case, and certain large nonprofits especially had their piece of the pie carved out in their territory. There's no room for organizational ego in this day and age. And so, I'm very proud of WordPlay and the level of collaborations that we have across the city, because it only deepens the impact for the kids. And we cannot be all things to all children, right? We have our mission. We have our guardrails for what we will and won't do. And so if we can help dovetail with other really fantastic efforts to give a more holistic approach to the kids we reach, that's the goal. It is hard. I in previous work, I've had to do a lot of public speaking and a lot of writing that becomes visible as well, whether it's grants or pieces to publish out there. But it is a constant struggle, because all those hours are essential of being out there, kind of being the face or the mouthpiece of WordPlay. Essential for outreach and education and drumming up support, drumming up new partnerships. But it's all that time that I'm not actually then in the trenches doing the work, and sometimes it can feel like the trenches. I'll be really honest. It is hard work often. It's long hours. But and at the end of the day, I am an introvert. I'm a very outgoing introvert, as they say. But I like to have a quiet space to recharge. So it's important. So there's definitely a little tug of war going on there.
Right on. So you just hit on it a little bit. Talk about your days. It's easy to say Libby runs WordPlay and she's tackling literacy in Cincinnati. What are you doing every day? How much of it is working with kids and actually working in the programs, how much of it is what you just described about going out and meeting with people? What are you doing today? What did you do yesterday?
Yeah. So it does change day to day, which I love. I need that. I need that varied schedule. Wordplay has taken a huge leap in the last year. We're just reaching our 6th birthday this September. And this past year, we were able to hire our 5th full-time employee, Jared O'Rourke, who's our education and outreach director. So he runs all of our programs. So until that point, we've had other people kind of helping to coordinate other programs for sure. I do development, I do programming. I work on being the public face of Wordplay, our community partnerships. We have some very deep partnerships with CPS schools. Until recently, I also clean the toilets, so it's kind of like everything, literally from kind of high level fundraising strategy and meeting with our major donors down to making sure that the recycling goes out. So on a day-to-day basis, again, we have an amazing team. We have a super talented full-time development communications person who is extraordinary, Reba Hennessy, and Sarah Nimmo, who is basically her assistant, and then other program folks, Desiree and Jory, just an extraordinary team to share the workload, and then our board to see now that we have this amazing board of directors truly there for us. And so it means that my days in the last 6 months or so, I actually feel like I can breathe again.
After 6 years? After
6 years. I feel like I do have some balance back. I remember all of us, right, striving for that elusive work-life balance. And I think I've come to learn, I think it is largely a myth that I look for the balance over the course of time. It's not in the day-to-day. I might still have a 12 or 14-hour day. Yeah. And it's really hard to do flex time to make up for that. Yep. But trying really hard. Then when I take time off, I'm getting ready to have 3 weeks off the radar, to do that and set that culture for our staff. Yeah. So on any given day, there's still a lot of grant writing. It's brutal. I have to kind of sequester myself to write grants and get in the zone, 12 hours nonstop thinking about how to phrase something. And then it could be out there, working with leadership at schools or CPS, to go to meetings and kind of working on partnerships. I still do like to retain a little bit of program time. It's that's my heart and soul. That's why we started Wordplay is being directly involved with the kids. That's what fuels me. And so we have something that I started among our staff called the Passion Project. We're all working for Wordplay because we care deeply about the mission. But sometimes our jobs take us away from that which we are most passionate about. Yeah. And so on our work plans, the employee work plans, what they are doing day by day with kind of monthly goals and measurements, I have everybody identify what their passion project is, and I want them to be sure to allot, a couple hours a week so that they're staying in touch with that. So for me, it's one of our teen programs, Word Up, staying involved with the kids, personally, and it is so incredibly rewarding. That will refuel me like nothing else, so it's amazing. I got to say, any chance I get to drive a kid to an event or something and have that talking time in the car,
and actually do
it's like, it's not a part of my job description at all, but that is the absolute best thing I think that I get to do.
Yeah, and you've told the story elsewhere about the specific impetus to starting Wordplay, which was an interaction with some kids that you had in Northside while you were working with a client of yours. Maybe you could tell a little bit of that just to give insight into how this whole thing started. I know you told the story elsewhere.
Yeah, sure thing. I always like to start out by saying I never had the idea to start a nonprofit. I think I had this wonderful pipe dream about winning the lottery and starting a foundation that could give money to people doing good things, right? That's kind of the dream of every nonprofit person, is to eventually get to give the money away. Yeah. So that's why I say Wordplay kind of happened to me. I was a realtor representing one of these community development corporations in Northside, renovating a building that had been vacant for 10 or 15 years. It was on the edge of a park that had been kind of the hotbed of a lot of bad activity where our gang was hanging out and all. And then the teenagers in the park were it kind of came to make that their home base, their turf. And I lived 3 blocks from there. They were dealing drugs, dice games, craps games, tagging buildings. And when we went over one night, we, meaning the architect and my client who was in a wheelchair, went over to this project, this small condominium conversion project. She was going to be buying the bottom unit so it could be then designed to meet her wheelchair needs. It was dark out, and I think it was one of the first times that the kids in the park had seen some activity in that building that was kind of their building, right? So what's going on? I've lived in Northside since 1996, and it's been a common intimidation factor for kids to throw rocks at people. When my kids were toddlers and we go play at the different parks around Northside, kids would throw rocks at us. It was just a thing. And so the rocks started flying, And I was livid, I was livid. And I knew calling the cops wasn't going to do a thing, So I really wanted to just have a conversation with them. So first running over there like a mother, what are you doing? We don't throw rocks at people. And this lady's in a wheelchair, for crying out loud. What if that was your mother? What if that was your grandmother, your sister?
Right.
Do people throw rocks at you? That whole, how does it feel? And I got to say it was mostly the girls that were up in my face, right? Denying that they did it and kind of yelling back at me. But I wanted to stick it out, and I really wanted to connect with them. It was a unique opportunity, I think, So in about 10 minutes or so, things did settle down, and I was able to really gain enough trust for them to answer my questions. I think they were somewhat amazed that this lady was just stopping and wanting to know more about them, So I wanted to know their feelings of safety, their feelings of connectedness in the neighborhood. I was technically their neighbor, right? I live a few blocks from here. I've raised my kids here. How do they feel about that connection? And I can say they didn't. They didn't feel any connection, and I understand. I mean, Northside is gentrifying rapidly, and even though this was 7 years ago, they were feeling very marginalized. They wanted no part of the new people moving into the neighborhood, right?
Yep.
So it was very eye-opening, and I have to say uplifting. At the end, they're cracking jokes. They're asking me for money for a soda. They're wanting attention, and
Actually
I realized
relating
that.
to you, yeah.
We're relating. Yeah. We connected, and and there's something so touching about that. I had worked with created some intervention groups for our refugee teens back when I was doing that work, and then some work with teenagers, at-risk teens overseas as well. And to find the same thing, to find that it's all relational, that you show them that you care about a relationship with them, you don't care about any outcome. There's no goal in it other than getting to know them. And I think that's a beautiful starting place. So I was obsessed with doing something to help the kids in the park, kind of feeling this collective guilt that, they're there for a reason. I can guarantee you all of those families were struggling, economically, right? Most of them probably living in poverty.
Yep.
And so feeling that Cincinnati, having one of the highest childhood poverty rates in the nation, and yet one of the lowest upward mobility rates for people in poverty to rise out of it. So I thought, we have to do something. These kids are being squeezed into a place of no opportunity.
Right.
So I was getting ready to kind of organize a roundtable discussion about it and call different groups that would have an interest in this and talking about it. And I think being the impatient person that I am or whatever, I just said, there's no time to talk. Let's do something. So 2 nights later, I was having beers with a very good friend of mine, Alyssa Yancey. And Alyssa was a longtime educator at that point, a writer and a mother, a Northside mother, no less. So she had known of all these dynamics in the neighborhood, the gentrification, the marginalization. Northside, we always love to say, oh, Northside's so diverse. It is, but it's completely segregated, almost entirely segregated, So shame on us for that. So talking with Alyssa and explaining to her just that feeling that I walked away from the park that night with, we have to do something for those kids, So that's what I kept saying. And that rhetorical we, and Alyssa said, all right, let's do it. And so that night she threw open her laptop. She showed me some examples of creative literacy programs. Alyssa being a writer. I mean, I've always been a writer as well, but kind of a personal writer. I never called myself a creative writer per se. So believing in the power of writing to connect and to build confidence. And then, of course, to instill those essential literacy skills. We settled on a model that was founded in San Francisco about 15 years ago, 826 National, founded by Dave Eggers and Nina Caligari, who was a teacher he had worked with. And I flew out to San Francisco to check it out and go through their kind of introductory seminar on how to start a creative nonprofit. And said, this is it, let's go forward. So it was sheer naivete, I think, that drove us forward, not knowing what the heck we were doing, one foot in front of the other, but also that failure is not an option kind of mentality. And here we are.
I have so many questions about that because, it's easy to tell that story and say, so we were going to do it. I would imagine that there's 1,000 decisions and 1,000 fears and anxieties that went into that. You were working as a realtor. You had been working as a realtor because you needed to make money and pay the bills. This is the decision to move away from the thing that you were doing to make money and pay the bills. How anxious was that as a decision for you?
I think personally, that was probably the only time in my life I could have done this. Again, a single mom with 3 kids, 0 savings in the bank. I literally had nothing to lose. And I thought, man, if I go bankrupt because of this, okay, big deal, and that was really my thinking. And so Alyssa, being that powerhouse behind the scenes, she became board chair and all, knowing that I had her as the first partner, teammate, cheerleader, everything, and then very quickly turning it over to the community. We had such a groundswell of support right away. And I think feeling that really, really bolstered me to take the leap to say this is going to be my career. So knowing I wouldn't get paid for a while, I was able to still do real estate somewhat part-time. And I think the biggest decision that helped me just sheerly make it and still be able to buy groceries that year was I sold my house in Northside. I had a big beast of a house, a big renovation project that had been foreclosure, and vacant for many years. And I was restoring it. And I thought, I can't do this and start WordPlay. So I sold that house to friends of mine, took the proceeds, paid off my debt. And I said, okay, I'm debt free at least. At least I'm back to square one now financially. And so I can keep earning just enough through real estate while I'm doing kind of getting WordPlay up and running as it was a full-time gig. And it was a lot of 80-hour weeks for sure. But the boys and I moved into the apartment above WordPlay. There's a third floor. WordPlay has the first and second floors of our spaces and our dog. And the boys were some of our first volunteers. So it became a really fantastic family thing. They were 12 and 14. So my twins, Evan and Owen, were 12. Isaac was 14.
Okay.
And I didn't get paid till 2013. That was a beautiful day, but it was still very much in the low income bracket, so I have to say it was many years of...
That's a check you pinned to the wall.
It was a check I ran to the bank with, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And then 3 years later, I was thrilled to see that a mortgage lender considered WordPlay a valid enough employer to give me money to buy a little house. So, so it's been quite a process. But yeah, there was a huge element. I mean, I'm a risk taker. I sometimes say it's my worst quality and my best quality. I just am a habitual risk taker. And this was a huge one. But, I think, again, just knowing the people that we had on our team, people will often say WordPlay is mine or it's mine and Alyssa's, and it's absolutely not. It's the community's. By the time we opened our doors, about 9 months after furious planning, we had a thank you poster on the wall that had over 150 names on it, just of all those people that somehow helped launch this amazing organization.
Right
so.
It's funny to me. Like you said a couple of things, and I started writing down a list here as you were talking, because you say that you're a risk taker. You also must be a relentless optimist.
I am. Yeah, I know that maybe that's also my best or worst.
Well, because you said you were describing the story of that incident with the kids on the street, and you said you ran across the street as a mother. You didn't say you ran across the street as a teacher. You didn't say you ran across the street to tell them what they should be doing. There are several instances in what you just told where your impulse was, you said, where's my note here? You said, what are we going to do for them, not what are we going to do about them? When you were talking to Alyssa, you said you have nothing to lose. A lot of people at that point in your life would have thought you have everything to lose because you're sort of at the bottom. I'm just interested in that piece of your personality, because even as I hear you telling these stories, at every decision point, at every inflection point in the story where somebody else might have done something else, somebody might have reacted and told that story from the viewpoint of their client, not from the viewpoint of the kids on the street. Your internal compass is oriented toward trust, toward optimism, yes, potentially toward risk. But you can take a lot of risks and not take them from such a good and healthy and well-meaning place.
Thank you for saying that. I know I've given my dad some sleepless nights worrying about me through these years. But he was an educator. He's very proud of where WordPlay is.
I'm sure.
I am a shameless optimist. I mean, and I call myself a hopeless socialist romantic. I want the best for everybody. And I think as a community, we come together to help everybody, right? Like a rising tide lifts all boats, right? It is so deeply ingrained in me, that I guess I don't know any other option. Again, I was willing to work part-time jobs on the side, piece them in around my evenings and weekends to make this happen. And it is for the kids. But I do want to explain something that's really important. In the nonprofit world, there's been this terminology that is quickly being unraveled, which is a good thing, about the serving and the served, helping them and those who need help. And we're trying to really change that language around it, because the reality is, like I was saying, when I connected with those kids in the park, I came away so fulfilled. I think they came away scratching their heads and probably wondering, wow, who is that lady? And she wanted to, and that was kind of cool, but okay, whatever. Yeah. But I felt restored that night. by hope, because of them. And so we approach it from that angle that this, both sides have beautiful things to offer. And our volunteers so often say they think they're getting more out of this than the kids are, which I know not to be true. It's very much a two-way street. But, I guess that's where I find the hope. Is that I think it's there. The good stuff is there, and that we are not serving anybody. We might talk about reaching them, partnering with the kids, partnering with their families. They all have strengths and gifts and assets to share that makes this community stronger. And they've been so undervalued, and they've been so demeaned for being quote unquote in need. So we might talk about at opportunity instead of in need. But whatever jargon you want to use. These kids are amazing, and they have so much to share. And so I want to try to help be a part of the way of shifting that verbiage around how we look at.
Yeah, which says so much about where our culture is at right now, and the us and them mentality, and getting further and further from opposite sides.
That's right.
And it is when you're not engaging with anybody, it's really easy to make guesses and judgments about who they might be and what their motivations are.
That's exactly right. And this whole growing kind of, what do we call it? Like this huge, horrible divide about us and other, right? And the other. And then I constantly go back to, I saw Father Greg of Homeboy Industries, his, started out in LA, this amazing priest who talked about people who are marginalized. And he said, we use that terminology. And he said, nobody should be marginalized. We need to expand the margins if that's the case. We all need to step out to where these folks are, so that they are inside the margins. Nobody should be left outside the margins. I think that's a huge part of what drives our culture as wordplay.
The other thing that's striking to me hearing you talk about this, I had, so I've worked in the corporate world for most of my working life. And part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast is to have conversations to find out what I want to do when I grow up. I had a series of conversations with another friend who owns a nonprofit in town, Kate, who she and her husband, Ramsey, run Design Impact. Yes. And a few years ago, I started talking with Kate about the concept of meaningful work. And one of the things that she really challenged me on at the time was, why do you care about this? Why do you want to do this? Is it because you're guilty about the things that you're doing and you just want to throw some coins in the coffer? Hearing you, and that was particularly challenging to me and has significantly influenced some decisions that I have made about how I spend my time since. I think for a lot of people, the discussion around meaningful work, well, I'm doing something, I want to do work with greater meaning. I don't hear you talking, you did use the word meaning a few minutes ago, but I don't hear you talking that way, because it seems to me that you don't have any other choice. Like the way that you are and the relationships that you have fostered with the people that you live with is not a choice. Well, I could do this work and this work is not meaningful. Even when you were doing real estate, you were doing meaningful work. And it's an orientation that you have. It's an engagement that you have with the world and your community that doesn't really allow you any other option. And there's not a question in that. It's more a reflection to say, I think maybe people who are in the position that I have been in of saying, I want to do work with greater meaning. What I hear you saying is engage with people. And meaning will come from it. It's not a decision to work for a nonprofit or not to work for a nonprofit. It's a decision to be involved in people's lives. And that is inescapable.
I think you nailed it there. It's funny. I don't know that I would have been able to say it so succinctly. That I think, and that's just who I am, right? It's not for everybody. Some people want stable, secure jobs, and they go home and they take good care of their families, and they're good neighbors and good citizens, and that is they're doing good in the world, and that's a wonderful, absolutely wonderful thing. For me, wherever I am, I'm just not content to have bad relationships, and they happen, right? Communication fails, whatever. But it's true, I think, for every level of the work that I am so honored to get to do every day. And so it does come down to the people. It comes down to every single individual relationship. And it's not like I'm going to, kind of squeeze, force meaning out of it. Yeah. But I think you come at these relationships, you approach them from a place of openness and integrity. And, again, a sense of seeking to understand before we seek to be understood, and what is good for you, what is good for the other side. And I think it can only result in something beautiful. I take missteps all the time. I say the wrong thing, right? I'm losing my filter as I get older. Yeah. I don't have as much patience as I used to. But cutting through to the essence of a relationship and trying to always show the other side that you have their best interest at heart. That you really do. that to me, I guess, has been kind of my MO, and hopefully continues to go very well.
Talking a little bit about the work, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was the difference between working for nonprofits and running a nonprofit. There's got to be a big difference. And how do you do that and how you learn that? You said that you went to the 826 national training. How did that prepare you? What did you need to know? What have you learned along the way? And how has the work changed for you in the last 6 years?
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot wrapped up in that. So yeah, it is not glamorous. Let me tell you that. It is not glamorous work. So the 826 101 is what it's called, the kind of introductory workshop for helping to people aspiring to launch new creative nonprofits. That was a huge help, just to even see, like, wow, people have really done it. You can research it all online all you want, but to actually sit face to face and speak with someone who's done it, and to get to ask a group of panelists, things that might be laughable questions. That was a big help in starting it. But as wonderful as it was, it didn't even begin to scratch the surface. And I'm a big experiential learner. I just have to immerse myself in things. It's the only way I realize I can truly learn and retain information, and then grow and expand and innovate and continue, hopefully, to build skills. So I think I could never have gone to a nonprofit kind of master's program or something and learned that way. Being in it every day, that I guess I feel very fortunate that, having been a co-founder and there from the beginning, I know every nook and cranny of WordPlay. I know all the ins and outs. I know the things that haven't gone well, and when we're on to something good, how we keep following our noses there. So I'm definitely a kind of unwitting executive director, and so maybe somewhat unintentional, but I do, I believe in the power of resonant leadership, and so that it's I might be that person at the helm, and again, kind of get to be the face person and that main relationship builder for WordPlay, but creating a resonance among everybody that we work with in any capacity is essential to success and moving forward. So I think, again, following that, learning best practices about partnerships, learning, getting down and dirty with the grant writing. How do I best write? We're churning them out left and right. It's a lot of hard, unglamorous work, but necessary. But how do we learn to diversify our revenue? You kind of look at the big silos of an executive director job for a small nonprofit, right? Overseeing programs, overseeing fundraising, overseeing day-to-day operations and HR and all that stuff that I know nothing about. And by the way, thank you. You are officially a WordPlay volunteer. I hope you recognize that. Brandon has contributed to us for human resources. I'm going to tap you again because we need some help there.
Anytime,
for sure.
Give me a call.
But, so then, and I think a big part of the job is maximizing others, helping them to develop their skills so that they can do the best they can. I hate micromanaging. I absolutely hate it. I knew nothing about HR. I'd supervised people in the past, but I hate the term management. And yet there's leading and there's managing. It's both, both are essential to this. But I think if you give people the tools to do the job the best they can, and you keep that communication open and honest, to me, that's what an executive director does. That's kind of the biggest part of this. And again, not being satisfied with mediocre, not being satisfied. There's productive conflict in the workplace. There's productive conflict in partnerships and collaborations. It's all good as long as you're always looking for the value and the lessons learned and how can we do better. So I feel like that's kind of what's wrapped up in it. I never could have learned that by sitting in a class. To me, it's a doing. I'm very much, I consider myself very much still, a novice at this. It's gone very well, but wide-eyed and a sponge for the information coming my way, I hope, to always learn and grow. And that's what I want for our staff, our volunteers, our kids, everybody.
Do you have mentors?
Me personally?
Yeah.
This is awful, and I hope I don't start to cry, but I might. I do, and I had 3, and I lost them all last year.
Oh, my God.
They all passed away. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
2 from heart attacks. One was our dear board chair, Tom Monaco, who had been my first my first really strong entree. I do believe in ongoing education, so I do take classes all the time. I did a 10-month nonprofit leadership institute with him. He was a lifelong educator and then helped to develop nonprofit leadership. And another dear mentor who I knew from the real estate world, Ed Hubert. And then Maureen Wood, so I don't know who might be listening to this, but Maureen Wood was a force to be reckoned with in Northside. She was a very strong woman, feminist developer in Northside in the 70s and 80s. And I first volunteered for her when I came back to Cincinnati in 1996. She had something called the Women's Research and Development Center to help equip women to have professions and the trades. And that's how I learned all my home renovation skills, or at least my enough to go get myself into trouble on my own houses. And so all three of them passed away last year, and it was a real kind of a crisis on many levels for me. It was very hard. But I think the hardest thing that came out of it was that same year I was being asked to mentor other people.
That was going to be my next question.
I just turned 50, right, a few months ago. And so last year I was 49. And I thought, oh my God, I'm not ready. I am not worthy. I can't be a mentor. I don't have my mentors. Like where's my support? I've always sought, I love feedback. I've always appreciated having teachers, even in things that I might have been somewhat accomplished at, just in terms of hobbies and skills. I love feedback and input. And I felt, even though I had the wonderful board at WordPlay, I've got Alyssa, co-founder and dear friend, I've got a great support team, but there is something for me that's just deeply ingrained in me to have that mentorship that I'm still looking for my next one. So anybody out there?
any willing mentors?
I'll put out an RFP, but I'm really happy to now turn around and be able to help, in whatever capacity I can with others that are seeking a kind of a similar mentoring relationship.
I'm sure that's immense. I mean, the experience that you have, is a lot at this point. I'm sure there is much to give, but it never ends.
I hope. Oh, it never ends. Yeah, it never ends.
You talked a couple of times about things that in the corporate world would be employee culture. And I feel like the corporate world talks a lot about that because the work is, to use the word again, sort of, it's difficult to find meaning in the work. And so you have to work really hard to make the culture good. But you have described the challenges of creating and maintaining culture in a nonprofit. I think not working in one, it might be easy for people to assume that takes care of itself when everybody's doing meaningful work every day. Is that something, talk about how you cultivate that in that environment, what the challenges to it are? Yeah,
I feel so fortunate to have been able to kind of shape and create a shared vision for the culture that we want at WordPlay, and it's, I think first and foremost, it's essential that, yes, as the kind of the top director here, executive director, setting that, vision, but the vision is inspired by everyone, so it's very essential. Staff are very involved in that. In fact, yesterday at we call our staff meetings the staffy hour, every other week, and at the staffy hour setting, every year we revisit the norms for how we want to work together so that everybody has a say in how we share, again, that kind of sometimes difficult conflict, how we can be very open and honest with each other, the things that are important to maintain, just our working norms. And then everybody has a buy-in to the process, and everybody has a stake in a happy and productive work environment. There's conflict all the time, right? A couple of years ago, we hit a tight spot and I wasn't getting paid again, so there is legitimate stress in this. And not to mention, we're working with, probably 85% of our kids overall are living in poverty.
Right.
And so we're working often on the front lines of seeing the challenges of that and kids facing tremendous trauma. And so there is the burnout, the secondary, all of that. So making sure that folks take care of themselves and that they know that they work for an organization that cares about their well-being is so important. Again, stuff happens, right? I make a misstep. I say something stupid. I institute a policy that might not be as popular as everybody would like. But always trying to think, again, the best interest of the organization first. We do have to keep that in mind. And then for everyone else to have a say. Okay, so what we try to do is create, everybody has work goals based on our strategic plan and our vision, and breaking those down to the monthly to-dos, those monthly to-do lists. And again, we're still we're very far from perfecting this, but then they get the freedom, the creativity to develop their own path to those goals, to that success. So I think just knowing that we value their own innate creativity, and that they really have control over their realm, and that my goal is to support them to do their best. It's not to tell them what to do. My goal is to, I ask my staff all the time, and I should say our staff, they're not mine. They're my friends, but I ask our staff all the time, what do you need to be successful? Professional development, additional tools, resources, what can we do? I'll go out and get it for you, So I think them feeling valued, I hope, is a great bonus of getting to work with us,
Do those instincts toward your orientation to company culture come from the same place as the instincts that the initial mission for WordPlay comes from?
Yeah, I think some, and community building, right, and that connection, that level of connection. But I think also it's just purely selfish. I don't want to work in a place that's kind of got an uptight, jerky mentality, and it's like, wow, I feel so honored that I get to carve out my ideal workplace because the work is hard. And like I said, the work is not glamorous and it's stressful and it's underpaid. So we darn well better be putting some other pieces in place that make it something, where we want to show up. We want to be with these people, we want to be with each other.
Right.
Sometimes I have to close my office door, but
Sometimes I want to be with you a little bit less right now.
Sometimes I want to work at my kitchen table. Yeah, right. I'd rather work with my dogs today. That's all right. But no, that's usually I need my blinders on to write my grants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but again, it's like kind of like not settling for anything less than a really great culture.
I can imagine that. The nonprofit world is a world that's consistently underfunded. It's a world where very often you're having to make do with what you've got. And so the drive for excellence while still doing what you can with what you have has to be an ongoing conflict.
It is.
Where to settle and where you can't afford to settle.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And, funders, there's a lot of emphasis on outcomes, which is very important, absolutely important. But sometimes outcomes are years in the making, and so to be able to demonstrate that we have the skills to kind of have a phased in approach to achieve some really amazing things. But what I find, you called it excellence. What I find is there is such a pressure on the part of the funding community. I think that's where it comes from. I think also competition for limited dollars. There are a lot of small nonprofits in Southwestern Ohio to always be what they call building capacity, to always be growing, to always be innovating. Every year I get to a point and I say, this is going to be our plateau year, guys. No new programs, no new nothing.
Just make everything better.
We're not adding to the staff. We're going to deepen all of our skills. We're going to take what we have and make it better. And inevitably, we have new partnerships requests every week. New schools want us, new nonprofits want to work with us, and that's a great thing. But so we can't stay still. If you try to level off, you're seen as stagnating in the nonprofit world. And so you do have to differentiate. A lot's been done in the past. What does WordPlay do that's different? Well, we're not just tutoring and literacy. So saying kind of what is our differentiator, what's our secret sauce. And striving for that excellence, that we do this better, we do it unlike anyone else, and we're having tremendous results. There's a lot of work that goes into demonstrating that. And that also stinks, right? Because it's taking time away again from the direct
from actually doing the work.
Programming.
Telling the story
That's
is
exactly
not doing
right.
the work.
And we do love telling the stories, I got to say. That's the beauty of this is, we do all love to write and kind of shout about our successes and recognize the times that things don't go well, and really work hard to redirect course. But there's so, it is frustrating. One thing I want to bring up real quick is there's this whole kind of way of scrutinizing nonprofits based on that 80-20 principle. And there's like the nonprofit charity watchdogs and all. And I understand they exist for a reason, but there's this totally arbitrary formula, right? That you want to see that no more than, 20% is going to operating costs and what they call overhead that's been demonized. Well, for WordPlay, our overhead is almost entirely our salaries, right? And then our rent, and then paying Duke Energy. Those are the three biggest things we need to make our programs happen, right? We need great program staff, and to be honest, we need to pay them a hell of a lot better than they're getting paid right now. We got to keep the lights on and the doors open. And so we can't write a $10,000 grant for papers and pencils, for program materials. And so to constantly be justifying why operating support is the heart and soul of what makes our organization go, so it's just a lot. We're trying to kind of shape our own internal donor culture. We have amazing individual donors so that we can have the leeway to innovate more with that funding and all and do things that might, be a little bit riskier, but so far have had tremendous results. But that's one of the biggest dances we do is all around funding and making things happen and how people perceive that work. So
how should a person who's looking to get involved in philanthropic work, who the first place that they go is to look at Donor Watch, do something differently to be able to dive into an organization, to be able to break out of the 80-20 mindset?
I wish I had a good, clear answer for you. I don't know yet, because so often, they're looking at the really big nonprofits, right? The huge national ones with multi-million-dollar budgets, and they should. They should be scrutinized, absolutely. But, it just makes me cringe when somebody looks at, say, the CEO of the National Salvation Army and sees a huge 6-figure salary. Well, I got to tell you, anything comparable in the corporate world is going to be multi-millions, millions of dollars with $1 million bonuses.
And to get that person who can run that organization, you have to pay for it.
That's right, with that level of expertise. So that's something else I think that needs to shift in our understanding. We are, it kind of comes back from our puritanical roots, right? That nonprofits are demonized for spending money at all.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, guess what?
Yeah, you have to be whipping yourself while you're doing the work in order to be seen as worth it.
That's right. That's right. So, yeah.
For you, what defines success for you? You talked about outcomes, and I know from a donor perspective and from an organizational perspective, those are well defined. For you on a daily basis, what does that mean to you? Like, how do you know at the end of the day whether you've done what you want to do? How do you, when you look back at the end of a year, how do you sort of quantify, I did what I wanted to do this year?
Yeah, there's so many levels to that. So the first years, we were trying to work on a strategic plan, which is kind of like the guiding vision, right? And then the steps like project managing what we do as an organization. And we've had different kind of stages of strategic plans, and sometimes they've been really helpful, and sometimes it's been a document like many nonprofits. It then goes away into the Google Drive folder, and we revisit it next year when we have our next board retreat. And we don't want to be that. We're just entering a new strategic planning phase, and I'm really excited, again, that it will drive everything every staff member does. And it's not just the board creating it. The staff is fully invested, as are our parents, our teachers, our community partners. So everybody's that we work with is going to have a voice in creating what we do. But at the end of the day, it used to be the first few years. I remember when the board was voting to give me a salary in the first place, like, can we do it? Can we do it? And then looking every year, okay, good. How did she do? And it was hilarious at that board meeting because it was basically like, okay, WordPlay is still afloat. We didn't lose any kids. We have this many volunteers. Everybody,
hurt.
All that. Exactly. Yeah. It was kind of like, all right. And we ended the year in the black, and it might be by $50 some years, but happy to say that's not the case now. But and so then to suddenly put, so for the board, they are essentially my bosses, and nonprofits are held in the public trust. So to be honest, the public is my boss as well, and everything is open book. So anybody can see what our, anything about WordPlay at any time. But success for us now is financial stability, because it takes that, and so at the end of the day, we're just nearing the end of our fiscal year today. And I'm really happy to say we have an amazing net this year. So it's so happy to see that. So fiscal stability, because we can put that money, we reinvest back into WordPlay now, and that is so important. And then our programs, we are constantly trying to deepen the impact for the kids. And so to see those outcomes really shaping their lives and kind of their futures, again, as learners, we don't want to just talk about literacy, although that's what we focus on. So understanding the meaning, especially when kids are growing up with us now over this many years, to see our kids moving on and graduating when they were slated to be at high risk for dropping out maybe 3-4 years ago. Yep. So all those go into it. There's the daily successes, there's the big yearly successes, and then there's learning, fail and fail fast, right? Learning from what doesn't work.
Right.
So. But yeah, hopefully now this next phase, we have an amazing facilitator leading us in the strategic planning process. So we will have some very clear things. And then it's exciting to share that with the public. We do an annual report. It's also coming out soon. So again, totally open book, as it should be, as it is required by the government to be. But to really shout the good news.
Yeah.
And
what are WordPlay's goals for the next phase? You've kind of talked a little bit about
so we have 2 locations now, our Northside Writing Center and then inside Aiken High School. Started in a teacher's lounge last year. We've been with Aiken for 6 years, and they finally gave us a room. So we're inside all of the classrooms. So we're there 5 days a week in classes, working alongside teachers for integrated arts programs and then after-school programming. And we just got a huge new grant from the state of Ohio called the Community Connectors Grant. It's funding a full-time new position to help kind of case manage after-school engagement and what we're doing with literacy and creative programming. And so expanding, I mean, it's necessary. We have been doing programming in Price Hill, and so we're looking at more of a permanent home there as well as our next neighborhood. We'll always have a home in Northside. That's always going to be our founding home. And our heart and soul is there, but Price Hill is a big neighborhood with a lot of kids, of kids. So expansion, we're looking into all kinds of kind of annual creative experiences for the community. We're kind of expanding a little bit beyond kindergarten through 12th grade. We used to say that in our mission. Now it's young people. But this summer we worked with, still in process, we are doing a workshop with the Down Syndrome Association. And so it's adults of all ages, And so in the past we've done some story sharing with refugee moms and, and American moms. So we're looking more at how we can kind of facilitate those story sharing experiences for people of all ages. We're going to be moving up the street at the end of the year to a partner organization, Churches Active in Northside. That's the food pantry in Northside. We're going to be their tenant in a building they own right next door to their main location, and looking more into how we can work specifically with their population, right? These are the families living in the lowest income bracket in Northside. They serve about 300 families every month, so it's still quite significant. And most of those families go to Chase Elementary School. That's a partner, so how can we deepen the relationship there and move into family literacy so we can support families even more than we have? So
it's a lot.
That's a few. Yeah, only to name a few.
Along the way, what do you do? What do you personally, not WordPlay, what do you personally do to take care of yourself to make sure that you remain in a good place to do all this work?
It's such a hard thing. So yeah, the first few years it was running on all fumes, and the work itself was my excuse for, that sustains me, that's okay, that gets me through the 14-hour days. And then my mentor, Tom Monaco, who passed away last year, the first year he was on our board, made me put into my annual benchmarks for what I had to achieve a personal goal, and I
not a personal goal for the work, a personal goal
for myself.
You, yeah.
And he followed up with me at our monthly meetings, so that was fantastic. So I'm trying to do that with all of our staff as well, to make sure that we are all taking care of it. So, again, with this amazing team, I now have. They're doing their jobs so well. I can really have a 40-hour work week. So it's trying to cut out in time. My two youngest, my twins just graduated high school and they're at home this summer, but then flying the nest and making sure I've got time with them. That's my most important thing, still being a mother, number one, always. My physical health, right? It stinks. I love being 50, but man, I can feel the difference the last 5 years or so, right?
Yeah.
I'm a very physical person, so always being outside in nature. And my family is far flung, all across the country and even internationally. So making time to be sure to be with them, those things sustain me. My friends, it's just, it's hard. Sometimes it's very elusive, and I sometimes get my priorities mixed up, and then I got to close my laptop at night. That's one thing I've been trying to do, is even leave my laptop at work at the end of the day, which
that's
is
a big
really
deal for
amazing. I know.
Any business owner or runner, much less a nonprofit.
It's only occasionally.
It's a goal.
But it's happening.
Goal.
It's happening. Yeah. And to say, I'm off work now. We kind of set a norm among our board and our staff. If somebody has to send an email after work hours, great. Nobody's obligated to read it. Nobody's obligated to respond. Yep. I still might check my phone at 6 a.m. for my emails. And I thought, don't do it. Put it down. So work in progress. But I'm hoping to kind of shut work out and not have work permeate all 24 hours in the day.
Cool. I think my last question is, how can people that hear this, that want to help out, get involved with what WordPlay's doing?
So we have a lot of ways they can do that. First of all, if people don't want to work directly with the kids, we'd love to have people give their time and talents behind the scenes, so we always need help with professional services of different kinds, from graphic design to, creatives. We're moving into 2 new spaces this year that we're going to need some help with on design and stuff. We do have, luckily, a free legal system through our service, through pro bono partnerships. So, we're fine in that department, but anything else, we're just happy. Some people just want to come in and help with data entry. If people want to get involved with the kids directly, we have such a range of programs now. We went through a big shift in our program delivery model last year. So for this past year, we didn't need the level of volunteers that we had in the past. I mean, really, to date, we have trained about 800 volunteers, and it's been an amazing thing. But we are now at a point where we're reopening some of these programs, retooling some of them, so that we're going to need a huge volunteer population for certain things that we're doing again. So, we'll put stuff out on our website about that, especially in spring 2019, opening some new literacy labs at schools. It'd be very exciting. So, they can just contact us, info@wordplaycincy.org. That's the best place to go, and we will plug them in.
Cool. And I'll put links to that and WordPlay's website and a lot of the other stuff that you've mentioned, including 826 National, if people are looking for information about the model.
Yeah.
All of that, we'll put that on our website at thedistillerpodcast.com.
And one thing I want to say, too, we have bi-monthly open mic nights. That's a really great way for people just to come into WordPlay, see the space, get a sense of our community, and celebrate the kids. So Friday Friday, July 27th. That's coming up, 5:30 to 7. We're going to have pizza donated by Dewey's, and Best Buy will be there to help too as volunteers. And it's in conjunction with our Down syndrome friends for that writing workshop we're doing. So our kids will perform, and their folks will perform, and then it'll be open for the public to perform as well.
Cool. Well, Libby, thank you so much. I have a ton of respect for what you have done, what you continue to do. Thanks for walking us through it and taking the time to spend with us and describe it a little bit for us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Any chance to talk about wordplay.
This episode of The Distiller was recorded live at 3 Points Urban Brewery at 331 East 13th Street in Cincinnati's Pendleton Arts District. 3 Points is reimagining what brewing can look like with a design-first approach to their three main areas of focus. Those are art, experience, and beer. And for more about what that means, visit Aaron and the staff at 3 Points in person, see what they're creating, see what they're brewing, taste what they're brewing. Thanks again to Aaron and the team for the great beer and the great environment. You can visit thedistillerpodcast.com, where we link out to 3 Points website and social media pages. There you can see the space, the art, the current tap list, and find out more about what makes 3 Points really special. And huge thanks again to our guest, Libby Hunter, for making time in her amazingly busy schedule to hang out with us on a Friday afternoon. WordPlay Cincy is doing amazing work, not only in their home neighborhood of Northside, but throughout Cincinnati, and especially in the schools in which they've been able to establish kind of a front and are doing great work for the kids there. Please check out the links on our website, learn more about WordPlay's mission and their work, and how you can get involved in helping Libby and the WordPlay team expand their mission and their impact. Check it all out on this episode's page at thedistillerpodcast.com for more information. The Distiller is produced, recorded, and hosted by me, Branton Dawson, with co-production and booking from Terry Heist. Our show is mixed and edited by Justin Golden. Our logo was designed by Scott Ryan, and our videos are by Mike Helm of Minute Moments Pictures. You can find The Distiller wherever you listen to podcasts. Please do subscribe to be notified when new episodes are released. And if you like what we're doing, please spread the word. You can follow or share our posts on Facebook and Instagram. And the best way you can help is to rate and review The Distiller wherever you listen. Those ratings and reviews help us rise to the top of rankings and searches when other people are looking for stuff to listen to. So thank you for that. Remember, you can listen and download every episode of The Distiller and find info, including links, photos of the guests, and a map of everywhere we've recorded the show at thedistillerpodcast.com. You can also get in touch with us there, or you can email us at mail@thedistillerpodcast.com. We love your suggestions for people you think should be on the show to talk about their search for meaningful work, or interesting places where you think we should record the show. And whether by email, on the website, or on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, we always love to hear from you. So until next time, thanks for listening. Bye-bye.